to our Thursday meeting. We have a presentation and discussion with the Hudson Valley Flood Resilience Network. Thanks to Steve to organizing that. It does say tentative, but I believe we are doing that today, right? Great. And then we're going to get into the regional CAP spreadsheet and spend some time there. I'm not sure if folks had a chance to get into that on their own, but we will go through that and take the time. And then we'll go through the other quicker updates, which I think won't take very long. But before we start, any comments on the minutes from last month? If not, we'll take a motion and a second to adopt those.
I'll make that motion to adopt.
Thanks, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, anyone opposed? Speak up. Make yourself known. Great, those are adopted. So let's jump in. Steve, do you want to do an introduction here?
Sure. I think I'd emailed people previously regarding the HVFRN Flood Resistance Network, Resilience Network that New Lebanon joined a couple of years ago, and I will let Jessica jump right in and tell us all about it.
Sure. Thanks so much, Steve, for inviting me here today, and thanks to the group for giving me some time. My name is Jess Coonan. I'm a resilience specialist with New York Sea Grant, which is a federal academic partnership between NOAA, Cornell, and SUNY in New York State. And so I serve the 10 counties that border the Hudson River estuary. I focus on coastal hazards, climate resilience, and overall estuary health. And one of my projects that I'm here to talk about today is I help facilitate the Hudson Valley Flood Resilience Network, along with Emily Vale of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. And we are funded through the Estuary Program and the New York State Water Resources Institute. And I did bring some slides, so I'll share my screen.
You might get blocked. You might need permission. So is there any way, Don, we can?
Oswaldo was on the call. It was. Oswaldo,
all good if not.
You there? No, I don't. I think. Well, he's
Heavy security features, Jessica.
Yes.
We don't want anyone just throwing their slides up.
Yeah, I get it.
No, I don't get it, but we'll try to work it out. Do you know, Don, if we can get that fixed, or?
Unless Oswaldo can enable it. I think it's only Columbia County employees can actually share the screen for some reason.
Do you want to forward it, Jessica, to? Yeah,
if you can send it to me, I can share it quickly.
It's a Google slideshow. So I can if you put your email in the chat, maybe
Great.
I can add you as like a person.
Perfect. We'll give you a minute to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I could also just go off the cuff without the slides, but you know, they're always nice to look at something.
Did put them together, so. So while we're waiting, if you go to the website, our Columbia, this is for everyone, go to the Climate Smart website and you look at the left side, there's the regional CAP menu item. If you click on that, you get to the page that Don put up with the spreadsheet. You can pull that up for our next discussion. Okay. You have it at the ready. We can also show it on the screen, but that's what we'll be looking at next. Jessica, you just tell us when you're ready and we'll wait for the slides to come up.
Okay. I just shared, Don should get a Google notification, I think.
All right, let me share my screen here. That look okay? Can everybody see that?
Can you go into presentation mode a little bigger?
Let's see.
That's great.
Perfect. Awesome. That was a really nice pivot there. So thank you. Yeah, that's just my introductory slide. And if you go to the next one, so the Hudson Valley Flood Resilience Network, our mission is to connect local governments who are, working on flood resilience issues and trying to manage and reduce their risk. And the reason for that is that we recognize that, New York is a home rule state. We've got a lot of small municipalities in the Hudson Valley, and adapting to flood risk really does fall on local governments, whether it be through infrastructure upgrades, updating zoning, educating the community. And often our local government have, limited capacity. Sometimes there's high turnover. And we also recognize that this work really is advanced by, dedicated individuals that choose to take this work on. Next slide. A bit of our history. This network was kind of born out of those years back when there was Hurricane Irene and Lee, and we had, extreme rain in the Catskills, and then Superstorm Sandy, which was, our record storm surge in the region. And so the estuary program funded these sea level rise task force reports where the three communities that were hit hardest by the storm surge, so Kingston, Piermont, and Catskill, they engaged in these planning processes. It's really similar to like a vulnerability assessment and a climate adaptation plan today. And then they worked together in the next few years to share recommendations, have discussions. They went to each community and kind of checked out what the issues were, and they found a lot of value in that. So in 2018, they formed the network, and it grew to 14 municipalities. So the Hudson River Watershed Alliance and Sea Grant, we joined in 2022 to take on this like leadership role. We completed a strategic roadmap, which allowed us to kind of define membership, define our structure. We have an advisory committee made up of members that kind of drives the work that we do. We have working groups. And today, FRN has grown to 28 municipalities, 35 partner organizations, and almost 100 individuals working on this stuff. So next slide, please. So what we do is we bring people together, and we really emphasize peer learning, like municipal staff learning from each other rather than, only technical experts, even though, we do that too. And kind of the ways that we've done this classically have been through quarterly virtual meetings, and we actually have one tomorrow, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And we also have in-person meetings once or twice a year. We also share opportunities for funding and education through monthly emails, sometimes more than once a month. So I just sent one out last night. It has, the latest funding opportunities from the state. It also has like a bunch of useful webinars in there. And then we're also starting to host more trainings. So recently, or coming up, we're going to host a land use leadership alliance training for members only. And that includes a resilience kind of code assessment for those communities that are selected. And then later this year, we're going to have a flood emergency communications training. And then just a general, bringing municipalities and, regional partners together on this platform as well. So next slide. So these are our upcoming programs, just to give you an idea of what we do. Tomorrow, we're going to host the mayor from Hastings-on-Hudson, which is a village in Westchester County. They were recently awarded a green resiliency grant for a flood mitigation project, which is like a detention pond in a residential area. And Mayor Armacost is just going to tell the story of how that happened. Like, what were the challenges? Who were the partners? What were the steps to the process? And there will be like time for QA and discussion. And then later this month, we have our meeting in Kingston. And we'll have speakers from the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services and the Department of State, talking about their different funding opportunities, programs, tools that help support flood resilience as well. There'll be time for networking. And then Ulster County is going to take us on a little tour of the Lower Esopus Creek because they have a lot of projects going on there at the moment. So encourage you to join either of these events. I can pass on, the registration for each. And I just wanted to point out that photo in the lower left is from City of Hudson. We actually had a meeting there in 2022. And I know there were some people from Germantown at that event, and maybe some others on this call, I'm not sure. Oh, Tara, I saw Tara was on. I think she was there as well. So next slide, please. So the way that we're structured is we really want to center, local governments. So that's what our members are. So it's any representative from town, village, city, and county governments. And that includes, volunteers on committees like Climate Smart. And so we have 48 people that are members right now, and that's the map that you can see there. And then we have this partnership level, and that is staff from agencies, regional organizations, and private sector consulting firms. The idea is that the partners are really there to support the members in the network. And then if you go to the next slide, I zeroed in on Columbia County, which we actually have some nice representation from Columbia in our membership. We've got Steve, Colleen Lutz from Ancrum. We've got our Germantown people. And I recently presented at an emergency managers meeting, and the director of emergency manager became a member as well. And then just to highlight that City of Hudson used to be a member with Michael Hoffman. He was actually on our advisory committee, but he left that position, and we just haven't found a replacement in Hudson yet. So that's really all I have for today, but I'd love to turn it over to see if anyone has any questions, or you want to talk about flooding issues in Columbia County, whatever makes sense.
Thank
And
you,
of course,
Jen.
we'd encourage. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just thanking you for the presentation, for being here. Someone else might have been speaking. No. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Chairman, this is Denal Collins. I may have missed it. Do you have a website, Jessica, for your program?
Yep, I'll put that in the chat right now.
Terrific. Thank you.
There's a button there, join FRN, and that's where I'll put that in the chat as well. And that's where you can find the form to fill out. That's the one thing I didn't mention on the next slide. Actually, it's there's a screenshot of it, but you would fill out that form as a member. I think you all would qualify as members on the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And then if you scroll down on the page, you can see our list of people that are currently members. It might not be totally up to date, but that map I showed is up to date.
John?
Yeah, I was wondering, Claverack is not a riverfront town, and I'm interested in what are some, just quickly, a couple of kinds of projects that a town that's not in the riverfront might undertake as part of your program.
Yeah, great question. And I should also note that this really did start as serving waterfront communities initially, but we've expanded out to the entire watershed. And so the types of projects that, a non-waterfront community has completed, like Hastings on Hudson, they're presenting tomorrow. They are a waterfront community, but the project that they're talking about is like the creation of a detention pond to help ease flooding in a neighborhood that's inland, that's not on the water. There's projects like culvert replacements, installing green infrastructure. That was in City of Albany. We did a tour where we went to a baseball field where they installed like a giant stormwater system below the baseball field, and there's like a created wetland. So there's all types of projects, flood mitigation projects that we've toured in the past. And, there's also things that communities can take on, like updating their local codes and zoning, that, it's not like a physical project you can tour, but there's a whole menu of flood mitigation actions that a community can take. And recently we've also been getting into flood emergency communications, like what can a town or village do? We know a storm is coming. Maybe we get like 4 days advance notice, and just improving communication to community members of maybe like what actions to take where the flooding could happen to improve safety in that way in the short term.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
Jessica, are you requiring folks to register or to sign up first before they register for tomorrow's thing?
Yeah, tomorrow it's a Zoom meeting, so you'll have to register to get the link. Thanks for that reminder, Steve. So I'll put that in the chat right now too. And then we also have registration for our event in Kingston. That's like a Google form, so I'll put that in the chat as well. And if you want to attend either the Zoom meeting tomorrow or the meeting in Kingston, but you're not sure if you want to be, join as a member yet, like that's fine too. Yeah, I would just say, check us out. And even if you don't know, like if you're coming into the network and you don't know what you need, that's okay too. We hope that over time, kind of plugging into the work that's going on and getting to talk to people, that's a key part of it. That will, that'll eventually lead to, ideas, inspiration, and action within your own community.
Great.
And it's free.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just saying
It's free.
Yeah, membership.
Yep. Yep,
Great.
that's right. And Steve, have you not to put you on the spot, but I feel like I remember you were at one of our webinars on Resilient New York, and
Yeah, I also came to the in-person workshop in Albany.
that's right. Yep.
It was very interesting, and I think one of the things that the takeaways too that we've actually adopted here in New Lebanon is a text system so that we can send out notifications to residents about whether it's a flood related event or any other emergency events. We just did that the end of last year, and that we were sort of inspired by what we had heard about in this program. So it's important, I think, that residents have, or that's one of the complaints we've also heard from residents, that they don't get notifications fast enough. So not everybody's on Facebook.
That's great to hear. I didn't realize that.
Great. Jessica, thank you so much for coming and for the work. It's really important. We appreciate it. And I'm sure that this will lead to more interest in the organization. So anything else?
Yeah, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Great. Okay, so we're going to shift gears to the Capital Region Mitigation Measures Municipal Feedback Spreadsheet. Come on. You guys look so excited. This is really interesting. I don't know. I mean, I know it's in the weeds, but that's kind of cool because it's where the rubber hits the road, or at least starts to, and it gets into the substance of what we're talking about when we say a climate action plan or any kind of mitigation strategy. that we're working on. And this is going to maybe put you to sleep if we don't liven it up a bit, because it's a lot. We really would like everyone who has the time, and I realize it's a lot of time. I went through it last week and added my 2 cents, to do the same if you have anything. So there'll be some time to do this after the meeting today too, but I would just like to go through each one quickly and see how far we get. Maybe we can't get through the whole spreadsheet, but Don, when do they want this by? Do you remember? Or Tara, maybe you know?
They said between 30 and 45 days. So it's been 30 days. So
Yeah.
another couple weeks, I'd say.
So
yeah,
let's,
that's totally fine. Yeah, it's not like a hard deadline, but between 30 and 45. So
okay, thanks, Tara. So let's give ourselves, I don't know if Don, if people do put things in, there's going to be any need to clean it up before we submit it. But what do you think? Another week, another 2 weeks? Okay. Let's do 2 weeks. And that gives people ample opportunity. This should be a primer to see what's there, so it doesn't feel like a big black box. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And you can also shift to whatever you're particularly interested in, or if you think you have some experience or particular knowledge on. The tabs is at the bottom are transportation, built environment, waste, industry, land sequestration, and agriculture. So you can immediately go to those measures within that section. And what we're doing is just providing general comments. We're also indicating measures that we as a community might be particularly interested in working on, and anything else that you want to add. So just go into the transportation tab quickly, and you'll see that, and I'm going to look on my computer, it's a little easier to read. The first is shift to zero emission vehicles in communities. That's the measure. The description is provide incentives to consumers and fleet operators to purchase or lease new medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles and or fueling infrastructure. So this is interesting. It affects both kind of what is technically feasible, because talking about medium and heavy duty, which aren't really that widely available yet, in my understanding. It could be buses or larger trucks. So it may be a technical hurdle, but it certainly is. And then there's also now a lot of confusion, to be frank, about the incentive programs, the federal funding for some of these programs, and we don't have answers. So just as an example, I put in, we need to clarify the changes in incentives and funding under the new administration and how that affects our options for pursuing this goal. We also need to discuss how to counter anti-EV sentiment that seems to be rising, alternative new funding mechanisms to make up for the drop in federal support. So those are just some thoughts on how we might approach that. Think about this as a section, a page, or a section of our cap, right? We start talking about this as a measure, which is going to get us to our goal in 30 years or wherever we set the time frame. These are all measures to get us there, right? And so we have to provide context. We have to provide funding sources, models. We have to provide a direction for people who want to pursue, other municipalities, towns that may want to pursue, or businesses, this measure. So that's kind of the context. So I'm not going to go into that level of depth here for every one of these, but I'm going to kind of allow for comments on any of them as we go, so interrupt. And we're going to stick in transportation for a bit, and see if this may not be a very productive way of doing this, in which case we'll just move along. But we'll see if there is any engagement. It may be difficult to do on the spot, but this is room for, we're going to give it some time for discussion and potentially adding to the spreadsheet as we go. We'll take notes. The other measures you can see there, enhance optimized application of zero emission transit services. So I said there, this may not be that relevant to Columbia County, right? So differentiate, my comment is to the regional cap, right? They need to differentiate for different types of communities what this actually might look like. it's going to be very different for us than it is for Albany County, for example. Invest in zero emission municipal fleets. So these are more light duty that we've already been doing that at the county level, thanks to Don's good work and the clean energy funds that we've gotten. So, and this is there's a technological barrier, but our cap and the regional cap should start with this, should provide a little primer on that, I think, should be able to say, these are the technologies that are available, or we expect that within this period of time, we'll start seeing some of these larger duty vehicles. I know electric buses have been, there's a goal to transition to electric buses. That's a big question that comes up. If we can provide clarity to people who are debating without full knowledge, without really knowing, but they're debating, oh, that's not going to be available, or, oh, we could do it, or it's going to shut down the grid. If we could help to provide a source of good information, reliable information on these questions, some of these questions are questions right now. And that in and of itself will help us move forward as a community. So that's that comment. Ride sharing, carpooling, this will look different in different communities. If there are any comments on these that jump out, Don.
Yeah, just I think one of the things they wanted to know was which ones would apply to us more and which ones would be less. And I'm just looking at the where is it? The shift single occupancy vehicle trips to CDTA, which would mean we don't have CDTA, but bus service. That's a tough one for Columbia County. Commuting to work. It's just not something I think is going to work for us. But the next one might work, like the support electric micromobility adoption communities. I mean, I see more and more folks. I drive Route 9 every day from Stockport to Hudson. I just see more and more folks with these electric bikes riding on the road. So I think that one is probably more applicable to us than the one right above it. Just a note there.
Yeah, we should put that note in there. I
Yeah.
think that's right. That's the kind of feedback we want. Christina.
I think it'd be interesting to explore if there is light rail option to our rural communities. I live in Germantown, work in Albany, hate driving there. And if the Amtrak didn't cost $80 a day, I would very happily take that. So if there would be an ability to think outside the box as to subsidize or add light rail to commute to and from the central cities, from the outlying counties, I think that is worth exploring.
I learned from our Ghent historian recently that there was an electric line from Hudson to Albany back in the day, in the 19th century, I think, maybe the early 20th. And it was super fast for the time. It was like 25 miles an hour or something. And it was quite a commercial corridor we were in at the time. It's funny how things have changed. So yeah, that's thinking outside the box, big picture. Rail trails, we have a lot of existing potential trails, right? We have old railroad lines. Some of them are coming online. Of course, we know the Harlem line they're working on now the final sections. Well, it'll take a long time, but they're starting up in Chatham, and they'll be going from Chatham to Ghent first, and then eventually Ghent to Philmont, and then eventually Philmont to connect to the rest of the trail. That's a great trail, and it could be used for commuting, certainly, or people living in these communities up here. But there are other trails that, the Albany-Boston line, there could be a whole network of people being off-road. So I think for our community, our rural community, rail trails could be great on a lot of levels, but including commuting for some people. John.
Yeah, I see this as a model or an opportunity to really employ some of the concepts of quality that you would find in other industries. Because if you don't measure something, no one's gonna pay attention to it. And I think the rail trail issue is kind of interesting because there is a lot of potential development there. And if even one metric were available rail line that could be developed, and then how much of the rail line is developed, just as I mean, that's a simple concept, but then that's something that you can show up and compare towns and other things. But that, and I only mention that one because I think that I worked in quality a lot in hospitals and in other areas, and the opportunity to have basic metrics that give you an idea of where you want to go. And there's a couple of areas here where I'll say something later. I just think that having that concept of comparative measures about where you want to go is a key thing that's got to come out of this kind of a planning process. And I'm not aware of it being done, but there's no reason why you wouldn't do it, because you would do it in a hospital, you would do it in a Toyota or any other place. Anyways.
That's a great point. So metrics, measurement of indicators of success, failure, how effective they are,
and potential
for expansion. That's we certainly need to include those general comments, but with regard to rails or rail trails, I know they do measure users. You know, that's a common thing. So they know how many people have been on the trail. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If you build it, how effective is it? Is it worth it? All those questions. So good point. Okay. Well, anything else come to mind on transportation? We're going to move along. Okay. The built environment.
Wow.
There's a lot here, right? So we're thinking about buildings and structures and energy used to heat and cool them. If you know, we've been doing a lot of this in this community. Certainly, we've been doing a lot of this across the country and throughout the world. A lot of this is electrification. It's related to turning a lot of our appliances and vehicles to to electricity as a power source and off of fossil fuels. And then the question becomes, what's fueling the grid? Those are all those connected questions here. So specific measures, just to get us going, efficient equipment and weatherization. Again, this is the same kind of comment. A lot of these programs have been supercharged by really favorable federal incentives and subsidies. And there are many questions that I don't have answers to. Someone might, but I think they're actually not answered right now as to what's happening. Obviously, the effort is to try to claw back or cut these programs or freeze them, and it's unclear exactly what is or what at the end of the day will be cut and what won't be. But in any case, it looks like there's going to be a period where federal funding will reduce, whether it's abrupt and sudden or whether it's over the next few years. And we need to adjust to that as we put our plan out within this context. As we develop it within this context, we need to be thinking in a kind of reality space, not in a, we go through what are the stages of grief. We need to get past denial, and we need to start getting toward acceptance and then start thinking about, okay, what does this mean? And we need information on that. I don't know if anyone on the call has any, just as this is an example, not to go down this rabbit hole, but has any, it feels like there's good information coming out right now on the direction of some of these funding sources, or what the state might be doing or private sector in response to that to try to compensate for the losses at the federal level. But those are questions that we need to investigate. And now that's part of our charge in this document. So that's trying to encourage the capital region to take the initiative on that, as they're ahead of us and they're doing their cap, and we're going to rely on their cap, I think, in many ways to help us frame out these issues and choose from some of these applicable measures. So any thoughts on the built environment? The other comment that I was putting in here is we often frame a lot of these discussions in terms of why it's urgent from a climate or environmental standpoint, right? We say this is the case. This case for moving in this direction, for creating a lower impact built environment, for example, or moving to electrified appliances and vehicles. What we often lack is the financial case for doing so, and that the economic benefits to the individual, to businesses, to communities. And I think we've tried to make that point in our efforts over the last few years, but I think it's more important than ever to maybe even lead with that. That's what's affecting people first and foremost. And this is an area where there's a lot of money to be saved. Just makes sense. Christina.
I think that's a great point, Dave. And I also would add to that that speaking about it from a health and safety perspective is a good thing to be doing in these times. We are constantly advocating for there being more kind of fluid communication between home repair programs and energy efficiency programs, because so often energy efficiency projects are stopped because of things like mold or asbestos. So making sure that those things can be addressed readily, and that is talked about as part of as climate goals as well. And then as well as all the health concerns of indoor air quality around combustion in the home.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to renters who are paying out the nose for their electric heat because the buildings aren't insulated, because the windows are old. So it falls on, the burden of this falls squarely upon working people that have a hard time paying that big bill every month. And so there are lots of ways of framing the benefits of improving our built environment. All right. Yeah, I mean, this will get it. This gets into land and ag issues, but we'll get to this in a minute. But land expand local renewable generation through land use and energy planning. There's a lot of work here that I think is being done. I'm not really up to speed on it, but there's certainly work that probably needs to be done in terms of identifying models of good development that navigate the challenges of balancing between solar and renewable, particularly solar, but renewable energy development at scale in our state and throughout rural areas and other land use and agriculture. Again, if we can add, we're not trying to take sides and try to lead as an advocate in this. We're trying to provide hopefully objective information, a lot of sources of information, maybe criteria or ways of evaluating when land may be considered to be appropriate or inappropriate. We have to wade into this controversial area because it's essential. It's essential both to meeting our climate goals, and it's also a hot button issue in our community. So those are things that we'll have to really spend time bringing out in the plan. I think the more we can, again, the more we can address those issues in a way that's real for people, it doesn't feel like they're just rereading the same spiel on why it is that we have to get all this renewable in, and come hell or high water, we're going to put it everywhere. Not to say we would say it that way, but if the kind of typical approach taken from kind of top down, instead we can really embed this discussion within the reality of our rural community and hopefully provide more resources for people to determine how to proceed, recommendations for best practices, that kind of thing. All right, I'm going to move along. If anyone has any comments on the built environment, interrupt. We're going to waste next. We've been doing some of this already, increase organic waste composting. So of course we'll want to have the solid waste department really lead in helping to inform, the practices that we already are doing, and we want to expand first and foremost, and promote, and also what are the additional type of measures that we can put forth. John.
One of the things, this gets to what we measure. As I understand it, there's at least half a dozen companies that haul waste out of the county. But I don't believe we know how much waste is hauled from where and where it goes and what it is. So there's no way of assessing what the total sort of collective performance of a county is if you don't have data. And even though the county and municipalities may not be able to do a whole lot in terms of moving us where we want to go, if we had a law that just required all the haulers to report, and how much could go to landfill, or anyway, having data that tells you where we are as a region, a region that wants to move towards zero waste, you have to start with collecting some of the right data. And it's not easy to do it, but once you set up the framework, then there's so much more that you can do. And since the counties are required to have a solid waste plan, and as I understand it, last time they did the plan, they didn't include some of this kind of stuff that would allow you to at least track what's going on. So this is, anyways, this is a key one that also educates the community about the incredible amount of emissions and other things. That's
right. Good point, and a good example of where we need more information, and then you can track progress over time or the lack thereof. So I like your idea of a recommended, requirement in the law for folks to have to provide, these companies to have to provide this information. That's smart. So John, I hope you are going to go into the spreadsheet later and put your 2 cents in writing, because that would be the best.
I've already sent some of that to Don.
Okay.
But after this session, I'm sure I'll have something else to add.
Great. Christina?
Hi, I love what John's saying about the private haulers, and this gets a little bit dicey when you're trying to tell private companies what to do, but I think that trying to figure out how they can optimize their routes so this, there's not 10 different haulers going down the same road. Our highway department has flagged private trash haulers as a big wear and tear problem on the road, and a big reason why a lot of the smaller bridges in Columbia County are being decommissioned. And that goes into, now we're all driving longer routes because these, low mileage shortcuts through the county are gone. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that probably gets into transportation. That's a complicated one, an important point. Any other thoughts on, there are lots of thoughts, but anyone want to add any comments, broad or specific, on any of these items here? Okay, industry. We have well, I don't know, Don, did you do this? There's a very cool little drop down thing that is in this.
I don't know who did that. No, I don't.
Oh, Terrence, maybe. His
It
name
might
is
have been. It might have been me by mistake. So I
I
got
don't know if that's a mistake. It looks like someone somehow, I don't know what it is, how it's organized. Anyway, so yeah, we're in industry. And we're talking about energy efficiency in operations, manufacturing, policy, and we certainly have private industry working in our county in different areas, certainly agriculture, but that's a separate category altogether. But there are other small, medium-sized companies as well. And so we'll just have to go through this and look at what's relevant and what's not. And let's spend the rest of the time talking about land and agriculture, which I think is going to be something we're going to really focus on. So there's a lot here and a lot of opportunities for us, given our nature as a natural area with working lands and natural lands, and the partners and organizations that are here that are working. A lot of programs on forest conservation right now, and there's a lot of focus on that at the state level for meeting our climate goals, among other things. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to diversify, make our forests more resilient, and to protect their health and restore some of the health of forests in our areas. It's going to make us stronger. It's going to help us adapt, and also will be a key piece to the climate puzzle, to offset some of those difficult to erase fossil fuel emissions in the next 20, 30 years. So it's also a real great way to engage the community. So laying out these options, models for most of our land in the state is privately owned. That's the case in the county as well. So this is really engaging with private landowners in many ways. Urban forests, yeah, I mean, Hudson has done some tree planting. Our towns, I would say, downtown areas would count as like urban forestry. Putting trees in makes a huge impact on people's lives and the quality of life in these more urban areas. So supporting those projects. So we're working with CAFRE on, and Don can give an update on kind of the data side and how to track some of this over time. So I'll just pause on that and let Don give an update if there is one after it's on our agenda. Land use planning. I mean, this both from an ag and forest standpoint, you know, we're not a very active community or set of communities when it comes to really thinking through land use on a larger scale. You know, zoning, where do we want development? Where do we not want it? What infrastructure is needed to do it? Like if we wanted to cluster, everyone says, let's cluster development in the hamlets and the villages. I think that's a great idea. But sometimes the infrastructure is just not there. You know, there's no sewage for like the town of Ghent. There's no municipal water. So there's only so much you can do. So do we solve that problem? Do we get into that? That's, you know, looking at that. There's a lot of energy right now on housing. There's a housing task force. There are people that are grappling with this very difficult challenge facing us, not having enough housing. So where do those houses go? We need more houses. So this needs to be a kind of a sustainable development model. And then with that, what do towns do? The county can provide perhaps some model zoning changes. Maybe it can provide some recommendations or at least a menu of options for how to proceed in this area to encourage development that's going to help provide housing and other essential services and make communities more functional, more walkable, and also at the same time to protect these natural areas and not develop our farmland, keep it in ag. So these are a lot of really interesting interconnected questions that are on a lot of people's minds. Kara.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how do we get buy-in from the local communities, because all this stuff makes a lot of good sense. And one thing to think about, and I don't know exactly how to put that into this plan, but you know, the biggest issue in Copake with the solar project is, you know, what you pointed out, not having keep farmland. They don't want that to get developed. There seems to be a very big appetite in Columbia County generally for people to maintain the way it looks and to enjoy it as it is. So that is against development. So I think there's a way to marry those two. And I don't know exactly how to point out and say, you know, it's a good, smart way to get buy-in from the community so that even if people may lean towards being, you know, alleged climate deniers, they're going to want to keep the place looking the way it does. So kind of balancing that, you know, we got to use what we can right now because we're up against a lot of pressure with the federal government against climate change. So I was just thinking, I don't know exactly how to meld that theme in here and throughout the whole spreadsheet in our comments, but just a way to always make it seem like, well, this will be appealing for you on this level, and then other people, it'll be appealing for you on this level.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. We have to speak to people on, you know, from where they're at.
Yeah, what language makes sense for them, you know?
Right. So other thoughts on land sequestration? John? You might be muted, John.
I agree with everything that Kara and you just said, and I want to emphasize, as we all know, this section is so critical for future sustainability. What I think the public doesn't understand very well, because its focus has been so much on emissions, but even once we get emissions down to a potentially sustainable level, there's going to be decades before it takes effect. Whereas if you can do all these things, we're going to get to a sustainable state far faster, because this is a much faster way of restoring all of the, you know, the ecosystem is a much faster way to control the absorption, the sequestration. And then I just want to sort of also add is one of the things that doesn't get discussed much since ever since the Carney report and the emphasis on greenhouse gas emissions is how significant the water cycle is, especially the small water cycle, in terms of restoring and regenerating all of these landscapes. And any ways we can work that into our education of the community is important, because people don't understand it. Say, oh, I just want to look nice. Well, you want to look functional too. You want it to be functional. Anyways, that's it.
Mm-hmm. I think we're getting at the broad benefits. I mean, to summarize, the broad benefits that go well beyond climate of having smart land use planning and protection and restoration of natural areas and forests in particular. So with that, we'll pivot to agriculture, give you a taste of the topics here if you haven't seen this yet. So there's a lot on here. Anaerobic digestion, generating energy from gas plants, so digesters. There are some that are in existence in our area, and so I think, you know, really looking at the cost benefit of these types of systems and getting some good data, good information for people to say, this is something that could be explored at the scale that we're at for a certain scale of farm, or really is not applicable to something that exists in our county, or might be used only in this context, or what have you. Having some specific examples of actual systems that are in place in analogous contexts would be ideal. Not just talking about this in the theoretical sense. No one's going to read that. Everyone knows that it's like and people that know are like, oh yeah, methane digester, that's how it works. That's cool. But can you actually use it here? Is it a possibility? And is it the best use of, you know, that resource? Nutrient management. I mean, I think this is perhaps the largest source of emissions from agriculture broadly, this and tillage, but it's you know, this is a really you know, we don't really have large CAFOs throughout the county, but we do have dairies, smaller dairies, and other livestock operations that have aggregated manure lagoons, or areas where manure is collected from, and there's great data on practices, various practices. Biochar is one of them, which can help reduce not only emissions of very potent greenhouse gases, methane and nitrous oxide and others, but also helps reduce nitrogen leaching and water pollution and smells. So those are the types of things we want to bring forth and provide examples. There aren't a lot of examples in the case of biochar for manure yet. Here are some of the other, feel free to speak up. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I hope you all do. If you have a particular area of interest like agriculture and you want to dig in deep there. You don't have to go through the whole spreadsheet. If everyone chooses to just do something that is of their, particularly interested in, or an area they have some experience in. Again, I know not everyone has the time, but in the next 2 weeks, we really want to add to this if people have more to add. I know John does, and thank you for that. And there have been some really good comments. Thank you, Christina, Kara, and others. But I don't know if there's anything else here that jumps out.
One of the things I thought was interesting is just looking at it today, because I looked at it over the weekend with what happened with the tariffs since the weekend, that section about, reduced dependency on imported food. I mean, that may be, I don't know what's going to happen with these tariffs. None of us do. But it's not a bad idea to keep promoting that. We're pretty good in the county with all our farmers markets, and we love our farmers, but ramping that up is a great idea, because it reduces a lot of stuff in transportation of all the foods too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you help finance, mention the financial issues with that, because I do hear complaints from people saying it's more expensive. But what will be interesting is if the food that's getting imported from Mexico starts going up, in prices, then they'll be like, maybe my local farmer isn't so expensive after all. But I feel like there's we have to keep, promoting that, because farmers need our help. They're losing funding from federal grants. So we love them, but everything's all connected, and people have to understand. And they do get that, but they won't get it until they look at their pocketbooks.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly more resilient. The question of cost is important, but we're certainly more resilient having these food sources. You see it with, they're not necessarily cheap, but you see it with eggs. They are obviously not cheap at all right now, but as you saw some of the large national kind of chains that produce eggs, some of those stocks drop and you didn't see them in the market. You continue to see a lot of egg production from local producers through this time. So it creates a lot more resilience. It's not addressing the cost, which is still very high.
Right. I mean, it goes back to the pandemic, in the beginning of the pandemic, when there were, it's not a fond memory we all want to go back to, but it is an illustrative point for now. Yeah.
There also are questions of kind of policy and subsidies. I heard that the local county USDA NRCS office was really hit hard by, which was reversed today, I think, but or yesterday, but hit hard by these cuts. And so there were people that were laid off from our local office who are helping implement these important programs for farmers, like the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, EQIP, these other funding sources that provide funding for conservation practices on farms that go right to the heart of this. If you can't pay for it, then a farmer's not a farmer that's right on the edge of profitability isn't going to, out of their own good heart, as much as they may want to, implement these practices. There has to be some payment for the service they're providing more broadly. So that is going to be very important. I think they reinstated a lot of those workers in the kind of whipsaw approach that's being taken at this time. It's very difficult, but we'll see how it affects things over time. We'll have to talk about those funding sources, those examples, why those programs are important, both for climate, ecological integrity, and also really how they help a farm become more resilient. So anyway, I'll pause there. It was a lot of me talking, and I did invite others to talk, but I think it's important to really spend some time with this if you plan on engaging in the overall effort that we're going to be involved in. And we'd love to have everyone engaged as much as possible, whether it's digging in deep in a certain area or helping us do outreach to constituents of particular sectors, through their the people they know, or reviewing and promoting kind of what we're doing. So this is a good primer. We need feedback in the next 2 weeks, and with that, I think I'll turn it over to Don to give us, and if there are any further thoughts, feel free to speak up. But Don, why don't you take over? We'll go to the next bullet point on the agenda, the action plan, but not this spreadsheet, some other updates. Don, you're muted.
Not much has happened since last month again. We still have not received the contract from DEC regarding the cap. No idea when that's going to come in. It could be any day now. So that's really all I have on our grant application and getting the money for doing the cap. Brenda wasn't able to make it today, but she did send us an email that the chairman intends to make appointments to the CAP committee, who will be running the show sometime this month. I assume it will be sometime around the full board meeting, which I believe is March 12th. So we'll be able to hear about who's going to be on that committee pretty soon. I have received a sample scope of work from Tara. Sent me an example from Saratoga. I forget if it was Saratoga County or Saratoga Springs. So pretty simple scope of work that she sent, and then basically it's just taking our work plan, massaging it a little bit, and making sure that applies to whatever we want to include in the RFP that we send out eventually. The CAFRE data, we did get an email from the folks at SUNY ESF that the data is on its way. Haven't received it yet, but they said it's a big job. It's a huge amount of data that they're putting together for us, but it is on their agenda. They are working on it, and they will send it over to us as soon as they can. Jennifer is not on the call today, is she?
No, she couldn't make it.
Yeah, so she had, I guess she was working through, she has her students working on her part of the land use subcommittee work. Do you remember what she said, Dave, of her last update, where she was with that? Anything to add on that? I don't.
The students are working. She's working on this kind of case study using Pilot, the ag software. She's going to do kind of to familiarize ourselves with what's possible and how it might be used more broadly as part of our deeper dive into ag emissions that we would put within the scope of work for the RFP. So it's a kind of a test run of sorts. She's working on that with her grad students, and she said they're making good progress. I think that's all I remember from her.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all I have is an update for the cap stuff. Still kind of in a holding pattern until we actually hear from DEC and get the cap committee formalized.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think next is I guess just the fact that the progress report and roadmap is now posted. Thank you, Don, for doing all that work. Really important. Any other comments on that?
No, just distribute it widely as you can. Just let folks know what we're doing here. I think that's a large part of the point of putting that all together.
Yeah. And thanks to Don, we're doing a lot. We need to do more, but we're doing a lot. So Terrence, I don't know if you're on, and then Christina, we just wanted to get updates from CLC and from the Clean Energy Hub.
Yep, I'm here. There's no new updates from last month. We're still working on our county-wide conservation plan, but I would like to let everyone know that we have our pancake breakfast coming up this March 22nd. So I think that's just in a couple of weeks on a Saturday. In the past, this has been something CLC's done with our members, but this year we're actually doing it kind of open to the whole community. So I'm going to throw a link into the chat. There's also always events that we're running at CLC, and we have an upcoming forest walk as well. So folks might be interested in joining Troy Waldy on that, and you can follow those links.
Great. I went on a walk with Troy and Heidi recently, looking at High Falls Conservation Area and a restoration project going on there, which is pretty cool, very exciting. So lots of good stuff. Thanks, Terrence.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Christina?
Hi. Nothing hugely new to report here. We did have a couple of nice events in Columbia County in the last month. One, an affordable housing fair in Hudson at Spark of Hudson, and another at the Chatham Library on heat pumps. So trying to kind of get the word out about energy efficiency and affordability still. We're monitoring what's going on federally, but don't really have any answers yet. It is New York State budget week, so we're hoping that the state invests heavily in these things to mitigate any changes that could happen federally. So stay tuned, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Cornell, Lindsay, are you on?
I am on. Thank you. Yeah, not too much new. We just held our Maple Fest event last weekend, which was a success despite the cold. And I'm not sure if it was announced last month. I couldn't make it last minute to the meeting, but we have some of our grants coming through, just waiting on the final green light to work with specific municipalities in Columbia and Greene, but Columbia specifically, town of Stuyvesant on a resilient policy analysis, and with town of Gallatin for the education and engagement and social media, specifically about disaster preparedness information. Those are both in relation to the Climate Smart Communities program.
Great, thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks.
Okay, now it's time to do a round robin, get everyone who has anything to add up to the plate. So looks like I got hands. I'm gonna let's see, how many more hands do we have? All right, Steve was first. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Lindsay, I just wanted to ask, have you heard anything about the proposal for New Lebanon in Canaan?
Yeah, so I'm referring to my supervisor, Becky, who I think all of you know. We're still waiting to hear feedback. Supposedly the next update, or the last update, was that they would have answers for us come April. So I will keep you all, up to date as much as I can.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And the other, I just had a comment or question for others. We got the updated hazard mitigation plan proposal or whatever from the consultants, and I noticed that they didn't incorporate any of our changes that we had submitted. Did anybody else have experience?
Yes, Steve.
Sorry, who's that?
Anna Chatham.
Oh, hi. Same experience?
Yeah, there were amendments we made early on in one of the steps that weren't accounted for.
Yeah, so we have to push back on that, I think. That's all I
You know
got.
who to push back on?
What's that?
Do you know who to contact? Who should you be in touch with?
No, it's, I think, Haley at The ones that sent it out from the consultant side.
Yeah, Haley Rivers.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, it's a little frustrating. We have a lot of people who spent time reviewing the whole thing, and then to get that back and not have anything incorporated it's a it's a joke.
Yeah. Is Haley still, or are they still engaged in this, or are they finished?
No,
Yeah.
they're still engaged.
Yeah, they are. It's actually in the process of going through the public review and comment period now. When I hear some, I'll send that out to everyone too. When I hear some exact dates for public hearing, and we're setting up a website for gaining some public feedback on the plan now.
Well, we can all provide feedback that they need to take our feedback.
Yeah.
Don, you said they're currently setting up a website for public feedback on this?
Yes, the last email I got, the folks at the emergency management were setting up a website where the public can provide some feedback on the plans. Can see the plan, the latest draft of the plan, and provide some feedback for that. And I believe they are having a public hearing, which I don't believe the date has been set yet. But I'll look into that a little more, and I'll send out whatever information I have to everybody.
All right. Thank you. Kara.
Okay, so Terrence mentioned the CLC pancake breakfast on March 22nd. That's that ends at about 11 o'clock. So go home, have your little nap after you've eaten too many pancakes, then come on down to Copake at 3 o'clock to the Copake Grange, because we're doing a presentation on planting and caring for trees to protect streams. And we've got somebody from the DEC's the Hudson River Estuary Program, and so it's going to be really, really good. And we're going to have food. That's the other part. And Don very kindly put it up on the calendar. So, like I said, you got time for a nap, then you can come into Copake. All right. The other thing that we talked about was we applied for the soil and water grant to plant trees around our town hall, because we've got pretty much just a completely unsheltered town hall. And we did get the grant for that. And now we're trying to figure out where we're going to actually put the trees and what we're going to do with it. So that's good news. It was a good size grant. And the other thing, in conjunction with the countywide conservation program, our CAC was talking about outreach to the community, because one of the most important things with that program, we really, really, really want the public's engagement in this. And we did have that initial public meeting on Zoom I think it was the end of January. And it was pretty well attended for a Zoom meeting like that. But we are going to be, we are working on the consultants are working on a survey. And if you guys could talk to whoever is your representative that's on the stakeholder group for your town, I think there's about 10 towns that sent representatives. Really, if you could figure out and help and communicate with CLC on how to get the word out, so that because we're going to have a survey that's being sent out, and we really need the public's input on that, because it's just going to help us make a program that's going to be so much more effective if everybody's engaged in it. So we were talking about, going to the school, obviously engaging and talking at the library, and maybe at houses of worship around the area, just things like that, like thinking outside the box about how we can get this out there for people to really give us feedback for what they're looking for. And a survey, I think, is going to come out. Terrence, I can't remember exactly when it is, but I think it's going to be within the next month or two.
I agree. I think it's actually in the next month that it should be finalized. Yep.
Yeah. And there is going to be a public in-person meeting at CLC, and I'm totally drawing a blank on the date of that meeting, and it's going to be at CLC's office, so people can come in and talk. It's going to be sort of like a fluid thing, but I'll get the dates of that, and then maybe we can put that up on the calendar too, just because I know it's a CLC event, but it is for the whole county, so I think it'd be really important to get the word out on that. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kara. Okay. Other updates? Hearing none.
I have a little one I'll mention. This just sort of got put together in the last couple of days, so we don't have any solid info, but May 3rd is Love Your Parks Day. And we are going to have the pollinator garden that we planted at Lake Taconic State Park. We're going to have a spring cleanup on that date, sort of tied in with all that. But I don't have any info yet to give to Don, but I'll put something together here soon.
Great. Spring is, I know it may not feel it yet, although it's been warm the last couple of days. Spring is upon us soon. So get ready to get your hands dirty, whatever that means to you. And there are lots of projects, and it'd be great to early April for the next meeting, we can try to get a list of all of the community planting projects that are happening. So I know a lot of people on this call are connected to those. If you could just make it a point to email Don and just let us know what those projects are, when they're happening. It's a great opportunity just to go and feel good in this strange time we're living in. Plant a tree, plant a native wildflower, help your pollinators. It does feel good. It improves our communities tremendously, paying it forward like that. So let's get a list of everything we know of. I know there's riparian projects, tree planting projects. So I don't know where the restoration grant program is from Partners for Climate Action. I think they've announced. Does anyone have an update on that? I should have had one ready. I don't have one. Anyone have the latest on that? I don't know if Matt Stinchcomb's on.
No, he wasn't here today.
We'll get an update on that too for next time. All right.
I know at least they announced who didn't receive the awards.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it sounds like maybe you were.
That's all right. You just got to keep trying. Stay
Yeah,
optimistic.
that's right. Stay strong and carry on. Well, there'll be more, I'm sure. So, that's how we'll have to be resilient in our communities and rely on each other to help support these projects more than ever. So, let's continue to do that. Spread the good word, and thanks everyone for your time. Don't forget,
Bye, everyone.
comment on the spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Thank you.